Hey guys, this is Melissa Bachman. Are you ready to stop spooking deer before it's even time to hunt them? Then you need the new Flex S Dark cellular trail camera from SpyPoint. With a no-glow flash option, long-lasting solar power, and a ton of settings that can be changed anytime through the SpyPoint app, there are no more excuses for letting your deer get wise before the season even starts. So check it out for yourself and see why the SpyPoint Flex S Dark is the unstoppable and undetectable scouting tool you need for your next hunt.
Join us at a Friends of NRA event where freedom, fun, and firearms come together like nowhere else. With more than 600 events held across the country, there's always one happening near you. From exciting games to exclusive auctions featuring one-of-a-kind firearms and gear you won't find anywhere else. Whether you're a lifelong hunter, a competitive shooter, or simply passionate about defending freedom, there is a seat for you. Visit friendsofnra.org to find an event near you and get ready for a night you won't forget.
Welcome to DSC's Campfires with Larry Weissoon, a unique blend of hunting, fishing, wildlife conservation, and the outdoor lifestyle. DSC's Campfires is brought to you by DSC, Conservation, Education, and Advocacy. Hornady, accurate, deadly, dependable. Taurus, award-winning revolvers and pistols. Stealth Vision, high-tech, precision-driven equipment for today's modern hunter. Mossberg, American-built, American-strong. Vineyard Max, deer attractants created for the aroma of success, game feeders, and other hunting products. Red 55 Winery, signature wines from Emmy Award-winning country artist Miranda Lambert, owned by Rick and Beverly Lambert. And the Choctaw Hunting Lodge, home of some of the finest hunting in North America. Now, here's Larry.
Hi, Larry.
Hi, Mr. Kyle. How are you doing today?
Excellent. Great to hear your voice. How was your weekend?
Well, absolutely great. We'll get into all this here in just a little bit. We had the DSC Oklahoma chapter, they call it the Trophy Room Social there at the Choctaw Hunting Lodge, and it went absolutely fantastic. Had probably about 50, and considering where it was relative to where most of the members lived, it was very well attended. Took them out at the tail end of everything, let everybody shoot my 7 PRC at a 1,000-yard target to see who could come the closest. Made everybody shoot the same rifle, same scope, same ammo, so it was all equal, and had 2 guys that got within 2/8 of an inch of separated number 1 and number 2, and so all that said, it was a great weekend.
That's awesome. That sounds like a lot of fun, that shoot.
It was. I'll tell you what, a lot of those guys, of course, where they live, they very seldom have an opportunity to shoot anywhere near that far. And so I had several people tell me, I've never even shot beyond about 300 yards. And I said, well, with this rifle and all that, I said, it'll be a lot easier than what you think it is. Don't overthink it. Just hold the crosshairs essentially where you wanted to go. Told them a little bit about reading the wind. And I said, and then just very carefully squeeze the trigger, and you'll hear the bing when it hits that steel target hanging down there.
So fantastic.
It went very well. Kyle, what I'd like to do is have you talk a little bit about several different things. I'll ask you a little bit about the different sheep species in British Columbia, and then we'll tell people what you do and talk about some of the things that are going on in British Columbia and some of the projects that y'all are involved with, and then also how people can contribute to your organization to help support those, whether they live in British Columbia or Frillsburg, Texas, where I grew up.
That's wonderful. And Larry, is this going to be on Del Safari Club's podcast platform, or just so I kind of know my audience, I guess?
It's going to be, my podcast is DSC's Campfires with Larry Weissoon. We're on.
Perfect.
Oh my gosh, Apple Podcast, Waypoint TV, iHeart, Spotify, Podbeam, Outdoor Action, Carbon TV, and a bunch of others.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'm very familiar. No, sorry, I just wanted to make sure that that's what we're going to be doing. Just want to make sure there wasn't something that,
yes, sir. Well, that's what it's going to be for.
Wonderful. Well, that's great. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so let me
love it.
let me let me do a countdown, and I'll introduce you, and we'll go from there.
Wonderful. Thanks
5.
so much.
Yes, sir. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the podcast campfire this morning, if you will. I've got Mr. Kyle Stelter on the phone with me from up in British Columbia. He is, among other things, the CEO of the Wild Sheep Society up in British Columbia. He's the vice chair at Wild Sheep Foundation, and he's the host of a podcast called Talking Sheep. Kyle, welcome to the podcast. And before you say anything, I want to tell you it's probably a whole lot cooler up there in British Columbia and probably a whole lot prettier right now than it is here in Texas. So you're making me jealous by being there.
Well, I have to say, Larry, first of all, thank you for having me on the show, and it's just a pleasure to talk with you. And I have to say that I've for a long time admired what you're doing and just really respect everything that you do for our hunting space and our community. So thank you for that, first of all. And thank you to Del Safari Club and all their membership. And I'm a Proud Life member of the club as well. And it's truly an honor to be on here with you. I will say that I guess it's just from a BC versus Texas perspective. Love to be down in your neck of the world and love Texas, love visiting such a great part of the world, and a real place I'd love to be part of. And that whole imaginary border that gets referred to a lot these days sure would be nice if we had the ability to come down there and live and spend some time with you guys. But I guess we get to visit, and that's what makes it special, right?
Yes, sir. In a way, I guess it does too, because I love British Columbia. I've been fortunate to have hunted up there numerous times, and there's so many things great about it. I've been there when it was totally green, and been up in the mountains where it turned to the most beautiful shades of red and scarlet you can ever imagine in just a period of a very few days. British Columbia, to me, has probably more big game and varieties of game species per relatively small area to maybe there may be some countries in Africa that rival the number of different species that y'all have. But I know we're here to talk about bighorn sheep. You've got several species of bighorn sheep there in British Columbia, don't you?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Larry. We're blessed here in British Columbia. The biodiversity is crazy, and it's just sort of a litany of species and mountain species as well. Certainly, if you're a mountain hunter, it's definitely a mecca for British Columbians. On the sheep side of things, super cool. We are the only jurisdiction that can sort of brag in North America to have 4 subspecies of wild sheep. So we've got 2 subspecies of bighorn. So we've got the Rocky Mountain bighorn, which we're all familiar with, and then the California bighorn, which it's my understanding that we are the only jurisdiction that currently has a native population of California bighorn sheep. So there are other jurisdictions that have obviously have Californians, but they were extirpated. So there was many transplants done over the years, many of which came from British Columbia. I think there was in 1954 we started transplants. And there was roughly 600 California bighorns transplanted to 7 lower 48 states.
Oh my goodness!
And Oregon was a big one, and I think there was 50 some odd sheep brought down into Oregon, and that population now is right around that 2 or 2,500 sheep mark. So very successful transplant out of British Columbia, which is very cool. Now I've drifted into the rabbit hole there, but and then on top of it, we've got 2 subspecies of thinhorn sheep. So we've got or 2 species. We've got the Dall sheep and we've got stone sheep. So we're really, really lucky in BC. And I won't go into the whole genetic discussion today, but we certainly have the bulk of stone sheep. And if you look at genetics, some will argue that we exclusively are the only jurisdiction to hold stone sheep in the world. But at the very least, there's not a lot of stone sheep out there, and we take it very seriously, our responsibility to look after them, because we feel it's a global responsibility between us and the Yukon.
I think it really is, and I totally agree. I've had the opportunity to see the stone sheep up there. Never hunted them, but had the opportunity to sit there and glass Prophet Musquash country, hunting moose and I guess it was mountain goat when I was up there. But had a chance to sit there and glass a bunch of them. And of course, I've had friends who hunted British Columbia and taken some fantastic sheep out of that particular area and other areas up there. Now, y'all sheep season, it started back when, in August this year?
Yeah, our opener is August 1st, so it's sort of, that's a big date on every single sheep hunter's calendar, and obviously the outfitting community, that's the go time. So we're, interesting enough, the season's been open almost 3 weeks now, and there's been some fantastic animals harvested
Really?
this fall. Yeah, we've just seen some tremendous sheep coming out of the mountains. So the populations are generally doing well. And we're seeing some really, really healthy stone sheep. And for your listeners, maybe some of them are familiar with the Chadwick ram, which was the iconic, so the world record stone sheep that was harvested years ago. And, it was the only stone sheep on record to ever exceed 50 inches in horn length. Just an absolute beautiful specimen. And that was up in that Prophet Musqueam region that you happened to be visiting. So maybe you were looking at a young Chadwick ram there when you were up there, Larry.
I tell you what we saw. Most of what we saw were young rams. And as you were saying there, there's a sculptor, I think his name was Rick Taylor, that did a sculpture of the Chadwick ram years and years ago, of which I'm sitting here in my office, and I'm looking at that particular sculpture as you were talking about, going, oh my God, if I could just turn that animal into real life right now, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely, for sure.
With all the things that are going on, I know in a lot of areas, we're here in Texas, and I had an opportunity to work with the Desert Bighorn program that we have here in Texas back in the 1970s. My wife and I raised 2 little rams from lambs and a little ewe that we used in blue tongue research years and years ago. And our populations over the last several years had really increased. Now we're having some difficulties, particularly with the mycoplasma type of pneumonia, and we're tracing some of that back to pretty much to the tremendous increase in the aoudad that has occurred out in the western part of the state. So we're in the process now of trying to find different ways that we can maybe kind of negate some of those problems. Are y'all facing some similar type problems? Not so much, of course, with aoudad, but what's going on? What is the future, or what's the present, and what does the future look like for some of the sheep in your part of the world, there in British Columbia?
Yeah, excellent question, Larry. And we do have a very similar issue. We can take aoudad and replace domestic sheep with it, but
yes, sir.
We're really having a challenge here, and a lot of people talk about the 2 main things for healthy ungulate populations: habitat and predator management. And I won't argue with them, with the exception of wild sheep and disease. And
right.
So, like you mentioned, mycoplasma pneumonia is a pervasive and persistent problem with us. And we've been working really hard. So we have a metapopulation in British Columbia. It's called the Fraser River metapopulation. We had about 2,500 bighorn sheep on that in that ecosystem historically, and they were healthy kind of right up into the 1990s, and then there was a pretty significant die-off. And really, the history of the Wild Sheep Society of BC sort of was spawned from that die-off. Dedicated conservationists and hunters noticed that, man, there's not as many sheep around on the hills that there used to be, and so that's kind of the genesis of the Wild Sheep Society of BC during that era. We did a survey, sort of ecosystem-wide survey in 2020, and the number was down to about 800 from the 2,500 that we've seen at an all-time high. So 60 to 70% die-off, and it was always suspected to be mycoplasma pneumonia, and then testing, sure enough, determined that is the case. So we've been working really hard on our Fraser River Test and Remove project, and I don't know if have you talked about Test and Remove on your podcast before at all?
No, sir. Please do.
Okay, so effectively what happens is mycoplasma pneumonia is highly transferable, of course, from domestic sheep, which tends to be the source here in British Columbia, much like aoudad in Texas. And then it's transmitted to wild sheep, and then of course it can be transmitted throughout the herds as well. And kind of the biggest carrier, the biggest threat is lambs. So effectively, what happens is an infected mother will be shedding. She will be, lambs are highly social. She'll be interacting with her lamb. The lamb will pick it up, and then it'll pass it on to other lambs. And because the lambs are so young and they have very low immunity, they just can't deal with it. And the mom maybe gets through because she's got immune system and she's been able to sort of cope, but for a young lamb. So what we'll see with the Mycoplasma ovi pneumonia is zero lamb recruitment. That's sort of the telltale sign. If you see a healthy lamb crop born and 3 months later or 4 months later, 5 months later, there's none on the landscape, that's classic Mycoplasma ovi pneumonia.
Oh my goodness, yes.
So
yes.
The big project that we've been doing is our Fraser River test and remove. Effectively, what we do is we catch all the females, we test them for MOBI.
Mm-hmm.
If they're MOBI positive, unfortunately, they have to be removed. They're basically, we terminate them, obviously take the meat. Meat's fine. That's not an issue, but obviously, the sheep themselves, they're the threat, they're the vector. And because there's no cure for MOBI, even if we did have a vaccine, how do you treat all those sheep? We don't even have a vaccine. So at the end of the day, our only option is to remove them off the landscape. So we started this project 8 years ago. We're about $1.5 million, $1.6 million in. We've got about 2.5 years, 3 years left, depending on the progress. And we'll be about a $2.4 million project and treated every single one of those sheep on the Fraser River, the females, that is. But the one amazing thing, Larry, and this is what gets me real excited about our world, is, there's a lot of doom and gloom out there. You look at your Texas bighorns, you guys work so hard to bring the population up, and then, you have this die-off that you guys have been struggling with. What we're seeing is where we've tested the sheep, pre-treatment, lamb recruitment was 13 lambs per 100 ewes, 15 lambs per 100 ewes, incredibly low. Post-treatment, we're seeing 40, 50, 60, 70. So it is night and day. And so you can see a herd that's been treated and one that's not. So we're seeing significant lamb recruitment, which at the end of the day, we're seeing significant increases in populations. Now, we haven't done a Fraser-wide survey. We're putting all our money into the test and remove right now. But we're definitely seeing increased numbers on the Fraser, which is really, really encouraging. So
that is absolutely fantastic. As you're aware, the only thing we have really talked about is I had Dr. Sam Cunningham and then our mutual friend over at the Wild Sheep Foundation, the Gray Thornton as well too, and we just talked about the problem. We didn't really talk about a lot of other things other than Sam and I talked a little bit about the moving of 80 sheep that were tested there, came off of Elephant Mountain, which has kind of been over our brood herd area, and they were moved to an area in the Franklin Mountains, which are just right almost in the city limits of El Paso. And that movement apparently has done very good. I've talked to them a little bit, and they saw a pretty good number of lambs being born there this year. So hopefully that'll kind of serve as a brood area for us now that's totally different from any of the mycoplasma problems.
Yeah, that's Franklin Mountain trap and transplant. That's a real success story, and really, really good, great to see. And, and that's the challenge that you guys are faced with. It's like, how do you fix your disease problem when aoudad is so pervasive? And I know that's not why you called me to talk about aoudad, but at least in BC, we can do our very best to try and mitigate that. And we're working real closely with any producers that are in the area to try and test their sheep and try and work with them. And so we don't have that sort of constant reinfection issue that you guys would have in Texas there.
With the domestic sheep, it's kind of like, I assume, like it is with the aoudad, there almost has to be direct contact between for them to pick it up, for our wire sheep to pick it up. Is it the same thing pretty much up there in British Columbia as well?
As a general rule, yes. Although it's my understanding, Dr. Tom Besser out of Washington State University had done a study a few years back, and they had sheep that were separated, and they had pretty good separation. It was and they noticed a case where there's transmission, and they feel that it wasn't direct contact. It may have been via the air, whatever the case may be. So, we always used to think, well, we'll just double fence. That's no problem. But now it's our understanding that double fencing is, although it's better than nothing, it's still not going to fix things 100%. Really, at the end of the day, we just got to keep that vector, whether it be aoudad or domestic sheep, away from our wild sheep somehow. It's harder said than done, isn't it?
Hello?
Yeah, you bet. I'm still here, Larry.
Yes, sir. I just lost you for a second. We're going to play this like it's live, so things do happen. Years ago, I keep coming back to Texas because it's where I'm from. But many years ago, we had a great population of desert bighorns, and then domestic sheep were introduced from down in South Africa, and we lost so many. Probably lost the population almost totally to blue tongue, or very much akin to epizootic hemorrhagic disease that we have in white-tailed deer these days. And as you mentioned, we brought that population up really good. We had probably about 2,600 sheep. I think we're down now to about 800 with some of the last figures that I heard. So hopefully with this movement, but also hopefully Texas will follow up on what you guys are doing as well too, and in the process too, trying not necessarily, I don't think we could ever truly eliminate the aoudad if we tried to even, but maybe we can eliminate, at least the extent closer to where the sheep are, our wild sheep are. So hopefully maybe something like what y'all have done, they can adapt here in Texas, and we can benefit from what you guys have learned with what your program is doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's pretty novel what we're doing on the test and remove.
Oh, yes, sir.
That said, it's not exclusive to BC. Idaho's been a leader in that. Dr. Francis Kassir has done a phenomenal job. There's been a lot of work done, and it's becoming more commonplace, and we're learning a lot of things about it. And there's obviously because it's novel, we're still making mistakes and we're learning as we go. But I feel like, at the end of the day, there's more sheep on the mountain. Really, that's why we're here.
Well, when you start talking about the recruitment that you've gotten as compared to previous to that speaks very, very highly as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I will say, Larry, it is a bit of a tough sell when you tell people, well, you've got to kill sheep to save them. It's not intuitive. And just, for your listeners, if there's a film that was produced by the Wild Sheep Society of BC, it's called Transmission. And if you were to visit mobifree.org, mobifree.org, it's a 53-minute runtime. It's a documentary, and it's more about it's almost more of a human interest story than it is about wild sheep disease. But it really explains well what we're doing and why it's so important and the impact it's having. But it's not for the faint of heart either, because it tells the real truth of the challenges that we're facing and what we're having to do on the landscape to sort of save this herd.
Yes, sir. I will make sure that people become more and more aware of that as well, too, because, again, it comes down to educating and having an understanding. And as you mentioned, sometimes it's really hard to try to convince people that the best thing you can do to save something is to kill a portion of them. And I can understand that kind of thing. But unfortunately, some of those who are not more common sense minded, shall we say, have a little bit of a rough time with those kind of things. This is part of the program. Y'all have got several other programs going now. I've had a chance to listen to your podcast a little bit, and in it, I know, and a few other things I looked at with your society is y'all are also doing a fair amount of selective burning, are you not, on some of the mountain ranges?
Yeah, so, the good news is with our northern thin-horn sheep, our Dulls and stone sheep, there's not really a pervasive disease issue and certainly no documented mycoplasma ovoPneumonia. So,
yes,
again, so if we can manage predators and we can manage the habitat, we're going to do a lot of good work for those ungulates up there. So we've got a very aggressive prescribed burning program, and we're very grateful we've been able to partner with the Dallas Safari Club Foundation on this. They've been a partner with us for the past 2 years, and this has been really an important project that has restored habitat. That's sort of the normal burn cycle for stone sheep habitat is like that 5 to 10 years. That's the desired range of burn cycle. And because of, industrial development and then sort of this mentality where if there's a fire, we got to put it out because it's dangerous. Sort of that mentality that we've seen it across, all across North America now. It's sort of that, but it's not a natural cycle. So we've got areas where for stone sheep, it hasn't burned in 40 years. And it's interesting when the biologists show us pictures of the landscape post-burn and then pre-burn, and you can just see that all that juniper and all that low shrub starts creeping up the landscape. and there's nothing to eat there. It's all just trees
No.
and shrubs and really not much for vegetation. So this over the past 4 years, we've been able to burn about 1,250 hectares. All high elevation stuff that's directly going to benefit stone sheep. And it's been a very successful program for us. We're seeing land recruitments very strong. And we've done region-wide surveys, and we've seen about a 50% increase in our surveys. We obviously we can't directly attribute that to the burn. There are probably other mitigating circumstances as well, or affecting circumstances that affect it as well. But the good news is we're doing some really good work for stone sheep. And to me, the exciting part is it's a collaboration. We're working with important partners. We're working with Dallas Safari Club Foundation and others to do these projects. And it's just a real benefit that we can help stone sheep like that.
That's one of the things that I'm very proud of as far as DSC and the DSC Foundation is the collaborative work that we've done with organizations such as y'all's, and that y'all's, in some instances, maybe even some of the government side of things. Those to me make so much sense, and it makes that dollar go a little bit farther, and you can get more dollars put together to do a really good job. When you were talking about burns, I was trying to remember where I saw the majority of the sheep when I was in Prophet Musqueam, and there was a natural burn where I suppose lightning had struck or something, of that nature. And where we saw the sheep initially, my thought was, well, I'm seeing them there because I can see them. And then I got to looking pretty close at the vegetation as we were walking through some of this other. There wasn't a whole lot of anything else there to eat in that thicker juniper type or that kind of habitat. So it very quickly became obvious, hey, the reason they're in those open areas is, among other things, because of the food values and the food that's there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And, there's a whole bunch of other benefits as well, creating sight lines for predators and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, yes, sir.
And so there's a lot of benefits, and we're seeing some real positive advances. And it's really, really challenging to get these prescribed burns because there's just this sort of public mentality that fire is bad. And, we worked really hard with the government to sort of get approvals.
Yes,
so it's really encouraging that we're able to do it, and we couldn't do it without the support of our partnerships because, some of these burns, our budgets are, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 a year. So
yes,
obviously, a small organization like this, like the society, is really challenging. So without our partners, there's no question. This is truly a collaborative effort that would not happen without the support of our partnerships.
Well, since we're talking about the partnerships, you've got an organization, and how can people, I know that organization is very supportive of the work that we're talking about. How can people become involved? And just because I live in Texas and I love sheep doesn't mean I have to just be concerned about sheep that are in Texas. I'm concerned about wild sheep universally, being a life member of the Wild Sheep Foundation, and of course a bunch of others as well too. But how can people become involved, and how can they get to learn more about these? We've touched about the learning a little bit, but let's touch on that a little bit more. How can people become much more aware and more educated when you get right down to it as far as wild sheep in your part of the world? Because there are a lot of similarities there with some of the states and some of the surrounding provinces as well too.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Larry, and thanks for bringing that up. And, I think that the one thing, if any of your listeners has been to British Columbia to maybe been up here on a hunt, or certainly a sheep hunt, we're here day in and day out looking after BC's wild sheep. That's our job, is to enhance wild sheep populations and their habitat. So that's our focus. That's what we do. We wake up in the morning with that mission, and we go to bed at night with that mission. So, if you've been to BC and certainly you want to support, I think that, keeping that in mind and making sure that we're still there to able to do the good work would be fantastic. And there's a number of ways to get involved, but certainly if you just want to learn a little bit about the society, going to wildsheepsociety.com, or if you just Google Wild Sheep Society BC, that I think we're number one on the search engine on that one anyway. So, we'd love to have you, be aware. And certainly, we do have volunteer opportunities, which I know is pretty challenging if you're from Texas to get up here for some of our on the ground work. But that said, there are volunteer opportunities, and then certainly, there's the financial aspect as well. And there's a number of ways to do that. But certainly, we have donation opportunities, and that money can be directed. We have our Monarch program here in British Columbia. It's basically a membership, but it's a donation-based membership where you can direct your funds. So if you're super passionate about seeing prescribed burn on the landscape and supporting stone sheep, you can direct that money directly to that initiative. But, last year, I think we did roughly 30 projects, close to $1 million in projects of our own money. And so there's certainly a plethora of opportunities, whether it be thin horn, bighorn, disease, just there's kind of a litany of work that we're doing and very involved. The one thing that our board is very clear is that we have to make sure that we support every sheep population in every jurisdiction. So we have about 6 jurisdictions in British Columbia, wildlife management areas that we identify them as regions, and we make sure that we're doing work in every single region. So it's important to us that we spread that money around and make sure that we're looking after all the sheep. We're not sort of hyper-focused on anything. Not that we couldn't be, but we try and make sure that we're active in every single area across the province.
Yes, sir. And these efforts are aimed at sheep, but in my experience as a biologist and other things, when you try to manage the habitat in terms of managing the habitat, you're going to increase that food, the variety of species and far as vegetation, but in so doing, you also increase the speciation or the number of species rather of wild birds, of songbirds, of all those other kind of things. And so to me, if somebody truly says that they love wildlife, and that includes butterflies, I talk a lot about butterflies when I get an opportunity because hardly ever ran into anybody that was scared of butterflies or didn't like them, but it opened the door for me to be able to talk to them about wildlife management kind of thing. Anything we do to try to really improve the habitat in terms of the burns or whatever, everything benefits out there. And so somebody, even if they're maybe been interested in saying, well, I really don't care anything about Dall sheep or stone sheep, but I sure do like birds up there. That's a way to support the bird habitat as well too.
That's so true, Larry, and spoken like that's words of wisdom for sure. It's interesting. One of the things that we ran into recently was we've been enhancing this high level sheep elevation,
right? And
in some of the areas we're seeing bison up on those on that high level elevation stuff, and they're losing habitat as well.
Yes,
and they're foraying up into these areas where there's a lot of forage for them, and so that's one of the challenges we've been having is looking at we get bison on sheep mountains, which geez, you sure wouldn't expect that. You think you'd see that on the plain somewhere, but here they're up on top of the mountain. Well, not probably on the top of the mountain, but I found that very interesting. And you're right. Our projects and the work that we're doing, they benefit a litany. And if you look at predator management, for example, boy, does that enhance a lot of everything. It's not just sheep or ungulates. It's everything that would sort of be a threat to a predator, or
yes, sir,
a meal for a predator. So.
Yes, sir. A lot of times, and I'd like to come back sometime and do a separate one with you about predation on sheep, if you don't mind, and we can talk about a lot of things at that point. I know you've got things going on. I've got things going on. Before we kind of halfway closed it out, I need to ask you your favorite sheep hunting story, whether it was one that you were with somebody, or you just happened to hear a good story about somebody on a sheep hunt. Have you got anything that you can kind of relate to our listeners when it comes to hunting sheep up in British Columbia?
Well, I will say, Larry, being a podcast host, I've got heard a few stories over the years, so I know that you can relate to that. That's for sure.
Oh, yes, sir.
But I do have one personal experience, and it's pretty close and special to my heart. It was my first experience, and it was my introduction to sheep hunting. And a friend of mine asked me to go on a sheep hunt, and of course, naively, didn't have any clue what I was in for. And as most sheep hunters can attest to, that first one is always a real eye opener. And so we went on our hunt, and of course he still bugs me to this day. I had a sweater, and it must have weighed 3 pounds. He just was like, I told you to bring a sweater, but not one that weighs 3 pounds. He was just laughing at all the, and all the wrong gear and everything.
Oh yes.
And of course we get so wrapped up in gear that that's a whole separate discussion in itself. But So anyway, we managed to trudge up the mountain, and on the opening morning, the friend of mine, he takes a beautiful stone sheep, gorgeous ram, and then so that was opening morning. So we hike over to a new drainage, and that takes us a day. And I think it's day 3 of the sheep hunt, and he talks me into going up to this ridge, and I'm just struggling to keep up because it's still my first sheep hunt, and my brain still isn't quite there. And so we perch our stuff ourselves right up on the hill, kind of tucked in the rocks, like creep up and over and tuck ourselves in. And he's telling me, oh, you got to really glass and keep an eye open and trying to teach me, and I've hunted before, but never sheep hunted. So, and he taps me on the shoulder and he goes, don't move. But he goes, if you look over your right shoulder, I think there's a legal sheep. And I'm like, what do you mean? And I look, and there's a ram bedded at 75 yards, 75 yards above me. And I'm like, okay, what do we do? And he goes, okay, well, let's back down here and circle around. And so I'm trying to stomp this thing, and he's like, just get over the lip so I can get the opportunity to take a shot. And he knows something's up. So what had happened is we came, set up our spot, and this ram came unbedded after we got there, because had it been 30 seconds or 2 minutes before, we would have busted because we were climbing up the mountain. And so that ram was bedded, and I was sneaking up, and my buddy pats me on the leg and goes, "Get your back down." He's going, "Your bum's higher than your head." So I'm like dragging myself, and he goes, "Stop messing around and figure out if he's legal." And well, I look at the ram, and I don't even put binoculars on him. I look at him, and he's 4 inches past his nose.
Oh my
in BC,
God!
They have to be past their nose or 8 years old.
Right.
And
oh my goodness.
So anyway, I get my rifle up and pull the trigger, and the ram he just lowers his head. He's bedded, face directly at us. His head just drops down, and I look at my buddy, and he looks at me, and we're just in disbelief. Like, it all happened in a matter of about 3 minutes, and just seeing that ram. So we walk up to him. Larry was 40 and a half inches on the one side. He was 13 years old.
Oh my God! Oh my gracious!
So my joke is that I like to call them in. I don't like to go and stalk them. I just call them in. So that's the luckiest sheep hunting story in the world. I'm sure somebody's got a better one, but I'll tell you, I was lucky. The sheep gods looked after me that day, Larry.
I've got to ask you one question. Do you wear that sweater every time you go hunting now or not?
No, don't. Oh, he forbade me to carry that thing. He's like, you leave that thing in camp. That's going nowhere. So, but ironically, we sat down, and here's the funny part is, you packed your snacks or your treats, and
yes, sir.
He gave me, we had gummy bears, and he gave me this like electric blue gummy bear. So we figured that it was that electric blue. I put that in my mouth, and then he tapped me on the shoulder to see the ram right at that point. So we figure it's that. And the funny thing is, we've been looking for like these electric blue gummy bears ever since and can't find them. So I don't know.
Oh, the word got out. How lucky it was. Somebody bought everyone that they ever produced and put a hold on all the rest of them. I got.
Yeah, there's a run on them. All the guide outfitters of BC bought every single one out there.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
One more thing before we get off of this thing. Tell me about Talk is Sheep. Now, this is the podcast that you're doing. Where do we hear it?
Yes.
All those other kind of good things.
Yeah, so it is Talk is Sheep, as you said, and we focus on conservation. We're a conservation organization, so that's
right.
Always the underlying factor. But we talk a little bit about everything. So if you want to hear about some good sheep hunting stories, if you want to hear about some gear, if you want to hear about some of the issues, these federal issues that we're having,
right.
Some of those things. So a little bit of everything on there. And obviously we're all on the major platforms, Spotify, Apple, and
right.
so just look under podcasts under on your search engine, Talk is Sheep, and we should be there. There are a few other ones. If you start listening to a religious rant, that's probably not us. So, I think there is one out there called Talk is Sheep, and it's certainly not about sheep conservation or sheep hunting. No. We'd love to have you listen along. We do a weekly podcast, and And I know you and I are chatting, and I'm hoping to get you on the podcast as soon as possible, because I know there's a lot of great wisdom that you could share with me. I'd love to hear about. So.
Well, I don't know about the wisdom, but I darn sure would like to be on the podcast with you. I'd consider it a great honor to do so. Again, I want to tell you, Kyle, thank you so very much for being part of the podcast today. And we'll try to steer more and more people your way, particularly to the Wild Sheep Society of British Columbia. And then, of course, your Talk is Sheep podcast as well, too. We'll try to push a lot of people that way wherever we can. And really look forward to catching up with you in person. Hopefully that might be in February of 26 when we gather up for the DSC convention there in Atlanta one more time.
Absolutely. I'll do everything I can to be there. I'm trying to, man, it's just that show schedule gets so, and we've got 2 shows that we run right in there too, but my priority is making it down to Atlanta there, and really excited about the show this year. So, and just grateful for all the fantastic work that Dell's Safari Club and Dell's Safari Club Foundation does for hunters, for conservation, for advocacy. We are so grateful, proud life member, and hopefully we'll see you down there in Atlanta. I'm really excited about it, Larry.
Yes, sir. Really appreciate you, and we'll see everybody right back here around the campfire next week.
DSC's Campfires with Larry Weishuhn has also been brought to you by The Crown Bar in LaGrange, Texas, the Texas Wildlife Association, Double Nickel Taxidermy, and Burnham Brothers Game Calls.
This episode is brought to you by ESPN. Catch the first WWE Premium Live event on ESPN, WrestlePalooza, live on Saturday, September 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. It's going to be an epic night in Indianapolis, featuring some of the biggest WWE superstars. This event is only on ESPN, so go to stream.espn.com and sign up to the ESPN app today for your all-access pass to WrestlePalooza and all WWE Premium Live events.